Alright, today we are looking at fractions. Well, fractions are pretty much, all they are is a part of something, a part of a whole. Not a whole, a whole. So let's say you had, 1/5. That's like if you had a pizza. Not a great pizza, but if you had a pizza, and you divide it into 5 pieces, you would have 1/5. So this is 1/5. Alright, and let's say you had, 5 blocks, I suppose. And let's say you had 1, 2, 3, that would be 3/5. Also something called equivalent fractions, and equivalent fractions pretty much mean if you had, for example, in here, 1 pizza, and you had equivalent fractions, so let's say you had a half, so you can see 1 out of 2, and thinking about that, that actually is half of the whole pizza. So let's say you had a half here, and then in this case you have 2/4. As you can see, it's exactly the same. So there you go. If this is a half, this equals 2/4. So you can do many equivalent fractions, and to see really mathematically what's an equivalent fraction, all you need to do is, let's say you've got a fraction like 1/4, you just times the top, which is called the numerator. So remember that, numerator, times the denominator. So what you got to do is you times the top by any number, and the same number you times the bottom by. So let's say you wanted to know, well, what's an equivalent fraction of 1/4? Well, all you got to do is, let's say you wanted to know equivalent fraction, well, just times this by 3 and this by 3, and guess what? You've got 3/12, and that is an equivalent fraction. Now, you'll be asked quite often to simplify or reduce fractions. So let's say you get something like 5/25. You've just got to recognize quickly, oh look, there's 5 in the top and bottom. Maybe I can do this, 1/5. So there's 1/5, for example, because you divide this by 5 and divide this by 5. And so let's say you had a really complicated something, like, for example, 64 and 128, and let's say it was hard for you to see, one big thing that you could just divide into both of them. You can just divide, this by 2, which would give you 32 and this will become 64, and then if you divided this by, 4, because you can see 4 goes into 32 and 64, you might get 8 on 16. And then you might say, oh, well, 8 goes into both of those, and you see it's 1/2. So you can progress in the simplifying sort of process. You don't have to do it all at once. Alright, so I think that once you've looked at that for a while, you might have mastered that, and then you may be thinking, well, let's say I've got something like, 5/10. How do I add it to something like, 7/10? Well, so this is how you do it. Now make sure that you can only do this if the bottom, which is, remember, the denominator is the same on both of the fractions. So let's say you have 5 and you get to 12 on 10. So as you can see, all I've done is done 5 plus 7. And always remember, don't add the denominators. Keep the same one on the bottom. So let's say you had 15 plus by 35 on, so 15 on 40 and 35 on 40. Make sure you'd keep 40 on the bottom, and then in the numerator you add, and then you get 50 on 40. Now, and remember, in our reducing, how do we reduce? Well, we can see 10 goes into both, so it'd be 5 on 4. Now, also, I'll teach you this later. Actually, no, I won't tell you what to do next. Alright, so remember, every time you do one, so I'm going to pause one for you, and so you better pause this and see if you can do it. I'll just write out the problem. Alright, so 21 on 238 plus by 9 on 238. Pause the video now if you want to give it a go. If you don't, I'm going to show you how it's done right now. Alright, so 21 plus 9, well, you know that's 30. And remember, the bottom, 238. Now, you're thinking, oh, well, that's great, Isaac, but, I mean, how do you do it if, you know, the denominator is different? What do? Do you add them together? What do you do? Well, no, you don't add them together, and I'm just going to show you right now what you do. So let's say you've got 3/5, and you've got, well, you could have 6 for, well, yeah, 1/4. Sorry, that sounds better. 3/5 plus by 1/4. Alright, you've got that. Now, we know, don't add the numerators yet because these are different. These two here, the denominators, are different. So don't add the numerator. Don't add the numerator, understand? Alright, so what you've got to do, and this can get a bit complicated, but you've got to find a common denominator, and they like to call it the lowest common denominator, or lowest common multiple, they sometimes call it. Alright, anyway, so what you've got to do, you've got to see where 5 and 4 have their sort of first meeting in their multiples. So I'll show you. 5, you know, when you multiply 5 by 1 is 5, 5 by 2 is 10, 15, 20, 25, and now for 4, see where they collide. 4, 16, 4, 16, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Can you see where there's one that matches the other one, and the lowest one possible? There you have it, the 20s. That's it, the 20s. So the lowest, so what happens here, the denominator becomes 20, and the numerator, well, what you got to do is you got to find 5 times what equals 20, or you could do 20 divided by 5 to find a number, which will be 4. And by the way, it's got nothing to do with this 4, it's just coincidental. So 20 divided by 5, which is 4, and with that 4 you times the top. And what's 4 times 3? Well, that's just 12. And then what you do with a quarter, well, you think, well, what times by 4 to get 20? Well, that's 5. So you got to do 20 on the bottom, and you got to times the top by 1. 1 times 5 is 5. Now, guess what? You've got the same denominator. So guess what? You keep the denominator, and voila, there's your answer. And also, can you simplify this? No, you can't. So don't simplify it, obviously. But always remember, try and simplify it, because you don't want to get marked down if you haven't simplified the fraction. Alright, so I'll give you 4 examples that you can do, and then we'll go on to something different. Alright. In green. Oh no, yeah, green's alright. Six sevenths plus by 7 by, sorry, 1/2. Alright, that's your first one. Go and do that. 8 tenths plus by 3/4. So that's your second one. I don't know, 4 sixths plus by 1/9. That's your next one. And I'll give you your last one to do will be alright, there you go. So let's look at all of them. So so pause the video now and do all of the problems. Once you're done, play it and I'll show you if you got your right answer. So let's think here. First of all, what's the lowest common denominator? 7. 2 doesn't go into 7, so 2 isn't a multiple of 7, so that can't be. 14, and so that's the lowest common multiple, 14. So what do you do here? So you go to 14 on the bottom. 2 times by 6 is 12, and then keep 14 on the bottom. And what do you times by 2 to get 14? 7. So 1 times 7 is 7. Answer 19 on 14. Alright, now for 8 tenths plus by 3/4. Alright, so does 4 go into 10? No. Does 4 go into, well, what's the next thing from 10? 20. 20. Does 4 go into 20? Yes. So how many times what has to be times by 10 to get to 20? Well, that's 2. So 2 times by 8 is 16 on 20. And that has to be plus by here, which will be 2 times by, so what times by 4 equals 20? 5. So 15 twentieths. This will be 31 on 20. Alright. 6, does 9 go into, well, other way around, sorry. Does 6 go into 9? No. Does 6 go into 18? Yes. So, what times by 6 equals 18? 3. So, 3 times 4 is 12 on 18. What times by 9 goes into 8, becomes 18? 2. So it becomes 2 times 1 on 18, which that becomes in the end 14 18ths. And let's simplify. What goes into 14 and 18 both? 2. So 7/9. Alright, last one. What goes into 9? Well, 3 actually just goes into 9. So the lowest common denominator is 9. So 8/9 stays the same. And what times by 3 becomes 9? Well, that's the same. It's 3. So that becomes 6/9. Add it together, you get 14/9. There you go. I'm running out of time, and so I'll have to say goodbye.